We have all of the latest on Tim Steiden's Brazilian excursion as he lives that hashtag jet life, flying here, there, and everywhere, talking Yuri Alberto, plus some other names have been linked. We have how Manchester United and Chelsea doing a deal could actually affect West Ham's business going on later in this window, as well as some concrete actual details on players who could potentially be leaving West Ham this summer. It's the West Ham Transfer Rumour Show, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're well. I hope you're good. I hope you had a lovely bank holiday weekend. I did. I was off at the wrestling, went to All In at Wembley, went to Stratford. It was weird going to Stratford. I haven't been there since pre-pandemic, and yet I was there, but not to watch West Ham. It was very odd to go to the Olympic Park and not watch West Ham, but I had a lovely time. I hope you did. Gio is off gallivanting around. He did a video yesterday, so if you're wondering where he is, I'll leave that at the end of this video. He spoke a little bit about our first name here, Yuri Alberto. If you want to see what he's up to and where he's living his life and why he's not doing videos all the time, there's some information there that you can glean. But ex-West Ham employee has let us know that West Ham have agreed personal terms with Yuri Alberto and talks are ongoing to get a deal agreed with the club. Not entirely shocking. I always thought that would probably be maybe the easier part of it. I suspect getting a deal with the club might be a little bit more difficult, and then agents will be an absolute nightmare, right? But really good, and it shows that this Tim Steidten tactic of flying off and actually talking to the players personally is showing yet more dividends. Every time he seems to have done this that I can think of, we have got that target and we have sorted it out in relatively quick succession. There have been very few times where I can, since the big fallout, since the big breakup, since the big hubbub that we covered on this channel, where there was all these arguments happening and people were unhappy with each other, and it all seemed completely lost at the beginning of the month. Actually, we seem to have got our act together, and most of that feels like Tim Steidten flying, talking to the players personally and getting those deals done. It seems to be working, and it seems to have worked again as we have now agreed personal terms with the player himself. Now, they have been linked with other people. X is saying that West Ham have been offered players from Brazilian clubs while Steidten is out there. A few left-backs and some others have emerged as targets ahead of Friday's deadline. Now, thankfully, Florian Plattenberg from Sky Sports Germany has offered up some names potentially. Now, I can't speak to Florian's track record. I don't know where I would put him in a tier list of reliability or anything, but we're hearing that potentially there's some other Brazilian names being offered. Here are some names that have been thrown up, one of whom I think we might have all heard on social media over the last couple of days. Florian Plattenberg said West Ham is focused on 3 strikers from Brazil as director Tim Steidten is already at site. For David Moyes, he's going to find a hard-working number 9 with a top character. The candidates are Yuri Alberto, of course, of Corinthians, the one we've just agreed personal terms with, Pedro of Flamengo, who we've been linked with sort of sporadically the last couple of days. I'm seeing his name pop up more and more, and Marcos Leonardo of Santos. I can't pretend to watch Brazilian football or South American football. I hear the names, I read about it, I get told like, oh, this one's quite good. You hear, oh, that one's quite good. The classic things you hear, there's this next Brazilian player, he's going to be the next Neymar, he's going to be the next Ronaldinho, the next Ronaldo. You know what they do. When a youth player comes across, they always say they have to be the next of someone. It can't be just the first of them. They have to compare it to someone and then it gets inflated. You know how these things work out, right? I've heard of these names. I can't say much about them. Marcus Leonardo's 20. He's only just starting out his career. He's only really just starting to explode onto the scene. Pedro Flamengo, I know a little bit more about because he's 26. He did at one point get a move to Europe, signed for Fiorentina. Didn't play. I think he played I looked it up earlier. I think it was 4 games. I should have written it down. I think it was 4 games with a combined minutes of about 50, 60 minutes. So basically didn't play, but went straight back out on loan to Brazil, ended up moving there permanently, so basically didn't get a chance in Europe. Whereas Yuri Alberto, despite being younger at 22, did get a chance in Europe, went to Zenit St. Petersburg. Unfortunately for him, then Russia decided to go to war, and so he ended up having to leave, but he went back to Brazil where he's continued to do well. But he did well at Zenit. I think he played 11 games, got something like 4 goals, 2 assists, something like that. So 6 goal contributions in 11 games isn't exactly bad. And it's difficult to fully judge these players because whenever you do, you're looking at pieces of information. For example, they're a striker, how many goals per games are they getting? But then if you think about someone like Mikel Antonio, he's not necessarily getting loads of goals per game. He's not even necessarily getting loads of assists per game, but what he's doing is vital to the way the team play. If you're looking for someone like Antonio, that might not be the metric you should be looking at. It becomes very difficult to judge these players without knowing them. Maybe I'll speak to Cal Goodall at Analytics United. He loves his South American football. He knows these things. He's smart, unlike me. So I should maybe talk to him, and maybe in a video tomorrow or something, we'll see if we can get a bit of the lowdown. But hey, maybe we'll know sooner rather than later, because he has been agreed personal terms with, apparently, Yuri Alberto specifically. So we'll see how this goes. And if you want to see how these things play out, you should look up the One Football app, ladies and gentlemen. It's a beautiful app. You know this if you've been around a long time. They've helped us out time and time again. And we've also spoken about them, to be frank, when we weren't sponsored again, because we love them. It makes it really easy to follow the football teams and the things you actually want to know. It combines social media with football. So you just follow the things you need, and then you open it up, bang, there it is. So just follow, say, West Ham. Maybe you're interested in what transfers are going to be going on towards the end of the window for all of it, either for Fantasy Premier League, either for whatever. You can follow the Premier League, then you can see all the Premier League stuff. It says push notifications to your phone. It makes it incredibly easy. When I'm sitting here making these documents that I make for the transfer room videos, where I'm looking down, I'm like, right, who said what about West Ham? Where's the source? Are they reliable? All of these things. It makes it so easy. It's just a list. It's just a perfect list. The One Football app, ladies and gentlemen, link in the description below. I thank them for sponsoring us, of course, but check them out because it is incredibly useful, and you'll hear us talk about it even when they're not sponsoring us, because it's just useful. Let's talk about this Manchester United-Chelsea thing, shall we? It's only a brief story that we'll touch on momentarily because it may affect us, but David Ornstein at The Athletic tweeted out that Manchester United have submitted a proposal to sign Marc Cucurella from Chelsea on loan. This has been something that's been on running the last couple of days, that Manchester United are really interested. He says Manchester United like the 25-year-old for Ten Hag's system. He's the top candidate as things stand. Now, why am I bringing this to you? Because if he leaves Chelsea, you would imagine that short-term target, Ian Maatsen, certainly would not be leaving Chelsea. He's someone who's been in the squad anyway. You see him on the bench, you see him involved in matchday squads, which I was a little bit surprised by. I would have thought that he probably would have gone straight out and not been given those chances. But the fact he's in and around shows that they see him as important enough to, if Cucurella was to leave, then they would probably have to keep him at that point. He probably would not be leaving. So that's just something we need to keep an eye on. Will Cucurella end up going to Manchester United? They have also been linked in the last day with, who is it? Someone else from somewhere else. Can't remember who it was. No, I thought it came back to me. Can't remember who it was. Someone from somewhere else got linked there, which meant potentially Cucurella would be staying at Chelsea, which means potentially maybe we could get Maatsen. I don't know. It's just one of those things that we need to keep an eye on as we go for left backs. One of the other ones to keep an eye on, Emile Smith Rowe. Peter O'Rourke at Footy Insider 24/7 says West Ham have registered their interest in signing Emile Smith Rowe, who has 3 years left on his contract, and Arsenal could accept a 35 to 40 million pound offer. I'll be honest, I'm writing this one off. We'll keep an eye on it, see if it develops at all, but I can't see it happening, especially after we've signed Kudus and Paquetá is staying. It's not happening. I feel comfortable writing this one up, but bring it up and ask you what you feel about it. Do you trust it? What's your vibes there? Let us know in the comment section below. Similar position, which is also probably why Emile Smith Rowe won't be happening, is Jesse Lingard. The Mirror reporting Jesse Lingard is set to join West Ham on a free transfer, though the Hammers will first prioritise a new striker. Sky have said that West Ham have held initial talks on a short-term deal with Jesse Lingard, and then most importantly, X has said Lingard is still training. He's training during the break to prove fitness and try and earn a deal. He wants to join and regrets joining Forest, but this is the most important bit potentially. He wants a positive relationship with the West Ham United fans. Any deal is expected to be a short-term contract, which is heavily performance-based, which is what I really wanted in this situation. When we were linked with Lingard, I was like, right, I will take it as long as it financially makes sense for us. If it is a short-term deal, which is heavily performance-based, then I'm happy with that, especially as someone who's just going to replace Lanzini levels in the squad, right? A guy who's just going to appear a couple of times, not that deep. He's just going to come in when we need him, come off the bench. He's not exactly going to be starting many games. We know he suits Moyes' system. We know he can play in multiple different positions. I think that makes perfect sense. Also, importantly, for what we're going to talk about next, he is homegrown. And that is a huge, huge thing we need to be looking at now, because we're getting to the squad size where we are at our limits, right? I think we've got 24 players. Currently, we're allowed, obviously, a squad size of 25, but we are at 8, I believe, homegrown players, which is what you need. You're allowed 17 non-homegrown players, and 8 homegrown is the limit, right? And we are at the limit. So no matter what we sign and no matter what we leave, we have to be really careful, because you all of a sudden are starting to jeopardize yourself, especially for Europe. So when there are links away for people like Ben Johnson, for example, that's something we really have to keep in mind, because not only is he homegrown, he's also club trained. Let's get on to those people leaving, shall we? Maxwell Cornet has been linked with a move away. Ex-West Ham employee saying West Ham may consider decent offers for Maxwell Cornet before the deadline. The sad one for me, Pablo Fornals, is obviously over the last week there's been a little bit of traction gaining about the idea of Pablo Fornals potentially leaving. Mike McGrath at the Telegraph says Fornals was the subject of a verbal inquiry from an undisclosed Saudi football club. This is an exact quote from him. Given the wealth of the clubs in Saudi Arabia, West Ham would expect to make a profit on the £24 million paid to Villarreal in 2019 for Fornals. He's in the final year of his contract, but the club have an option, which was revealed when he signed, which secures him until 2025 if triggered. Another thing I learnt from this article when I was reading it is that Saudi Arabia's transfer deadline day is actually a week after ours. So when our deadline shuts, that's still something that's going to happen. I'm thinking of remembering Jose Fonte going to China. Their transfer window went on later. He ended up leaving after the deadline. We didn't replace him. I felt like that was a huge mistake at the time. I'm seeing similar patterns here. It's only a week as opposed to a bit longer. I think theirs was a month, but certainly something we have to keep an eye on. I would be devastated if we lost Pablo Fornals. Not lose, that's not English. If we lost Pablo Fornals, I think he's a wonderful player. I think he's so important to us over the last 5 years. I think he has such a strong role to play in the squad. I really, really don't want to lose him, but I also understand that with the likes of Kudus coming in, with Paquetá staying, all of a sudden he's probably seeing his game time drop massively. We're still being linked with forwards who can play out wide as well. I can see how that would be a potential for him, thinking, well, I need to play football. I wouldn't begrudge him wanting to go and play football, but I would really hope we wouldn't sell him, because I love the guy. Also, listen, if we're making a profit on him with 1 year plus an extra year on his contract, then yeah, I get it. That could enable us to go and sign the Brazilian striker, maybe a left back like Matson or someone else. Maybe we could start looking at right backs. Maybe we can look at other things. It would maybe a left winger, something I would really like, for example. It would enable us to do other things, but at the same time, what are you losing? However, when you get linked with the likes of Johnson being linked with a move away, Danny Ings is someone who I've seen linked with a move away. Aaron Cresswell obviously was linked heavily with move away. You can even speak about Mikel Antonio. Losing those homegrown players feels like a non-starter right now. And so if they're a non-starter because you're at 8, and if you lose any more, then it starts to become really difficult, especially for the likes of, for example, Johnson and Coventry, who's also around in the squad. They both count as club trained. That is a big thing for Europe, because in Europe you need 4 club trained as well as 4 homegrown to make up the 8. One, they have to have been trained specifically at the club. If you're losing out on those, then all of a sudden your squad is getting significantly smaller. In Europe, all of a sudden we're playing with a 23, 22-man squad. All of a sudden it becomes very, very difficult. And so looking at these outs, again, if there is a big offer for Pablo Fornals, who isn't club trained, he isn't homegrown, I could understand the temptation for someone who maybe isn't as vital as he once was to leave, especially if they want first team football, but I don't want it to happen. Maxwell Cornet, on the other hand, I want to keep him. I think we've got a lot more to see from him. I think he has shown in glimpses what he's capable of. And I think actually even in the game he came on this season, just looks lively instantaneously. I think there's so much more to come from him. But if, as X saying, if decent offers came in, they would consider it. If it's decent, he's not necessary. He's not needed for the squad. Again, Kudus puts us in a good position where we can sort of do these things. I don't want to lose someone who can play not only on the left, but also on the right. However, I get it. I get it if decent offers come in. The end of the transfer window for people leaving is going to be really, really interesting because of those homegrown figures, because of the club trained figures, because of how much we still seem to be active in the window, looking at Brazilian strikers, looking at all of these other players. It will become vital because we are at the limit of numbers, and with Jesse Lingard coming in, that might facilitate some of these things. Because if Jesse Lingard comes in, all of a sudden we've got 9 homegrown players. We can lose a homegrown player, or we can even lose a non-homegrown player, and it not be too much of a problem, right? it enables other things. So potentially that makes that deal even more realistic because you get him in, it's not that deep financially, and then you can make other deals as well. I don't know. I'm glad my job is not squad planning at West Ham because one, it seems to have not gone very well over the last couple of years and it's still a bit of a mess. But two, fixing that is very, very difficult. And we are seeing that now where all of a sudden we're coming up against brick walls. But we've done really well in this transfer window. And I personally am excited to see the rest of it. And we'll be covering it all right here, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video because it helps us out massively. Hit that bell notification button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Because we'll be covering everything as it happens as we approach deadline day. Deadline day is, of course, the 1st, which I believe is Friday. It is Friday. Friday, of course, we also have not only the Luton match, but also that's the date of the Europa League draw, group stage draw. So we'll be doing a stream for the draw. We'll be doing a stream for the match itself. We'll be doing all of our match day coverage by that point. So build up, watch along, review, all that stuff. And then also probably discussing the transfer window. There's a lot going on that day. So make sure to stick around because anything happens, you're damn sure you'll be able to find out about it here. Thanks for watching, everyone. Come your irons, enjoy yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.